Hi everybody, my name is Callie and today I want to tell you how my OCD tried to convince me that my world was ending. So this might take a minute, so if you want to get up and grab a snack or grab something to drink, that might be a good idea. So of course, as people say, hindsight is 20/20, and being an adult and looking back on my life, knowing what I know now and experiencing what I've experienced, I can pick out points either in my young adult life or in my childhood where my OCD was affecting me. But there's one particular day about 12 years ago that I can pick out that it really felt like my world stopped spinning. So before I get into that particular day, I'd like to tell you guys an analogy I kind of came up with to talk about my thoughts in terms of OCD, because I think it's a lot easier to talk about it when we put it in terms of an experience that is pretty much universal, that almost everybody has had, right? So go on this journey with me for a second, just stay with me. Imagine your thoughts as a bunch of grapes, okay? So pretty much everybody has had the experience of eating grapes, right? So you eat one grape, it's good, it's a normal grape, it's whatever. That's a thought. So that's like, you know, oh, the sun's shining today. Oh, what do I have to make for dinner? Oh, I have to do this thing for work. You know, these random benign thoughts that we don't assign any good or bad meaning to. They're just neutral, they're just there, right? Then we have another grape. We eat the next grape. It's another thought. That's something like, oh, I can't wait to see my friends this weekend, or oh yeah, I heard that they're turning that book into a movie, right? So it's like, again, no meaning, just in and out they go, right? But then, have you ever eaten a grape that was so sour, it just threw you off kilter and suddenly you're, ugh, that's disgusting. Where did that come from? That's so sour, that's so gross. That's what an intrusive thought is like when it comes to OCD, right? So it's this thought that suddenly it just shocks you and takes you out of the moment and you say, oh, what was that? That is what having OCD can be like when it comes to having an intrusive thought. So for me, my sour grape thought, right, was, I remember it was a lovely August day. I was sitting outside and I was holding one of my little dogs. And for some reason it popped into my mind, hey, you know what? It would be really easy to snap his neck right now. I said, wow, okay, that thought wasn't like any of the other ones. That grape was not like any of the other ones. And for whatever reason, that thought threw me into a downward spiral, and it made me question pretty much everything about myself up until that point. It made me question my life until that point. It made me question whether I was a good person. It made me question whether I was a dangerous person. It made me question if I wanted to do something to hurt somebody. And then later on, once I found out what that was, I realized that that was harm OCD, which plagued me for quite some time after that. I was very fortunate, I think, in comparison to a lot of other people, where I found out relatively soon after I started down that spiral that that was actually OCD, because there are so many people that go for so long before they get treatment because they don't know what OCD is. They, you know, liken it to washing your hands or, you know, being clean or tidy. Of course, not knowing the distressing thoughts that might come with something like that. And I don't want to discredit anybody who does wash their hands, you know, chronically, or they, you know, clean or do whatever, because of course that is just as distressing to them, the thoughts that are making them do that. It's just as distressing as my one sour grape thought that threw me into this just pit of despair. As I said, I was very fortunate in that I found out that it was OCD. However, it took at that point quite a while to find someone who could help me. I didn't have the resources that I have today. It wasn't something that was very openly talked about. I was trying to find people online who were talking about it. It was a very dark and scary and alienating time for me in my life. A very, very dark period for me that is, I don't want to say it's hard to recall. I have a different perspective now than I did at that point. So it's painful, but I know so much now that I didn't know then that I wish I could just go back to that girl that I was, 12 years ago and say, it's really going to be okay. This doesn't say anything about your character, doesn't say anything about who you are, doesn't indicate anything. It's just that you have OCD and there's things that you can do to help that. And of course, one of those things is exposure and response prevention therapy, or ERP. So I found in my journey, I wasted no time trying to find someone who could help me. I found, unfortunately, that a lot of therapists claimed that they did ERP, that they specialized in OCD, but a lot of what they were offering was talk therapy, which ultimately made things worse for me. So again, hindsight, I know now that that wasn't really the way to go, but unfortunately those were the resources that I had at my disposal at the time. But after a while, I did find a therapist to work with me and do, real bona fide ERP. And I won't lie to you, it was a scary process. It was a lot of work, but the payoff for the work that I did is priceless. I can't put a price tag on being able to live a normal life without those thoughts really making me question my character. I can't put a price tag on that. ERP helped me to realize that, yes, I had that weird thought, or yes, I continued to have these weird thoughts that morphed and changed into God knows what, but it doesn't really mean anything. And you can learn to sit with that anxiety and say, yeah, I had that thought, but how is that thought different from the other one that I had that was a good one that I didn't get stuck on? Why did I get stuck on this bad one, right? So I was able to kind of reframe the way that I was thinking about my thoughts, and I was able to understand that I'm not really controlling what's popping into my head, right? So it doesn't say anything about me. Now, 12 years later, being able to look at my life and look at the things that I've accomplished in spite of having OCD, I just am so glad that I took the route towards ERP and did that for myself, because I just feel like the sky's the limit on what I can do. And I know that 12 years ago, I was not in the headspace to think that way, because I thought that I was a bad person. I thought that I was going to meet my end in some horrible way. And I just, like I said, I wish I could go back and say it's going to be okay. But that is to say, if any of this resonates with you, it might be time to start thinking about getting treatment for your OCD. And you can do that today by going to treatmyocd.com or NOCD.com and finding a licensed therapist that specializes in ERP and helping people with OCD, and help to get your life back on track and live despite having OCD. I think you really owe it to yourself to be able to move forward, do the things that you want to in life, and reach the goals that you want to reach. Because it is possible, and ERP is the way to do that. So on that note, I'm gonna get going, but I will see you guys later. Bye!